Hi there and welcome back to the channel. We've made it to the top of St Agnes beacon, and what a great spot this is. I'm standing on top of what was a Bronze Age burial mound, so I'm talking about something that was built around 2,500 years ago. Whoever was buried here was clearly important, a tribal chief probably, because they chose this location with the most incredible views across the entire region. On a clear day you can see right across to St Ives in one direction and inland towards Bodmin Moor on the other.
But this beacon has seen a lot of history. During the Napoleonic Wars, from 1803 to 1815, this became one of a chain of beacons that stretched right across Cornwall. If the Spanish Armada or any other French naval threat was spotted heading toward the coast, this beacon would be lit and the signal would spread all the way down the coast. It was an early warning system basically, and quite an effective one too. Later, in the late 18th century, someone decided to build a tower up here as well. The remnants remain nearby, but I haven't found them. It was meant to be a kind of summer house with brilliant views for sightseers, and clearly someone thought this spot was worth travelling for. But the tower didn't last. By 1819 it was already falling to bits, and it eventually just disappeared completely.
Well, this is St Agnes beacon. With its own doggy drinking pond. Unfortunately, I'm biting to the sun over there. But anyway, at least we got the sun today. It's a great view. Well, let's have a look around. There's St Agnes down there, and Wheel Kitty in the background. Let's hit the drone. Right, let's pack this up. There we go. We're rounding St Agnes Head now, and the views just get better and better. This headland's absolutely windswept. You can feel why the sailors would be wary of the coast. There's no shelter here. It's completely exposed to whatever the Atlantic wants to throw at it, and it throws a lot. But that's also what makes it beautiful. You have to keep your eyes on the path because it gets a bit boggy, but otherwise they're quite well kept around here. Got the sun straight on the sea there. But here we have the National Coast Watch of St Agnes Head. Visitors welcome. Follow us on Facebook. With a ding-dingy flagpole.
Also built up here during Napoleon's time was a target for the local militia to practice on. It was a stone wall with an iron plate fixed to it. Can you imagine the conversation? Don't stand next to Clemo. He's proper handsome, but even with the Blockbuster Deluxe, he still couldn't hit a door with it. The target was demolished in World War II during the construction of Cameron Camp. Cameron Camp was a World War II light anti-aircraft training facility built between 1939 and 40 on St Agnes Head to train the 10th Light Anti-Aircraft Battery. Named after a local landowner, it consisted of Nissen huts, bungalows, a cinema and a NAFI, also serving as a practice site for American troops before D-Day. There's still a lone sentry box left on the road up to the car park, and here in the car park we can also see gun emplacements still visible. If you look around up here, you might also notice what looks like piles of stones scattered about. Now, according to the legend of Bolster the Giant, if you remember him stomping about from the Chapel Porth video, these are actually barrows and they tell a rather grim part of the story. You see, Bolster's wife was absolutely exhausted from carrying stones up this hill in her apron because Bolster would make her do it whenever he was angry. And he was angry a lot. Those piles of stones you can see up here, local tradition said that they are the very stones that she carried up, left behind as a monument to her suffering. Whether that's actually true or not, we'll never know, but I rather like the idea that they're still here. It's a good reminder that this place has been telling stories for thousands of years.
Here I am in St Agnes. I've parked in the village car park and paid over there. So I'm going to go out of the car park and take a turn to the right just to go up to see the location of a 1904 photo I want to show you. So let's do that first and then we'll carry on down into the town. Okay, let's take a wander. Here I am walking into the sun. This is the Railway Inn, but the photograph I wanted to show you was taken from this side, and it was from 1904. So you'll notice some railings there across the corner, and there's an arch over there, but for the bus stop now. But it used to be where you could catch a horse bus that used to travel between St Agnes, Truro and Redruth. It took you an hour and a half to get to Truro, so about the same as today when the holiday traffic's here. Anyway, let's go on and move down into St Agnes. First things first, why is it called St Agnes? Or St Anne's, as the locals call it? Well, that's where we need to start with a Roman martyr who lived way back in 304 AD. St Agnes was this beautiful young woman of extraordinary virtue, and she refused to marry the son of a powerful Roman governor because she'd already decided to personally bequeath herself to Jesus. It's a Miners and Mechanics Institute. Has it got a photograph about that? We're all past Moore Edwards, the JPE, 1893. Right, back to Agnes. She had decided to personally bequeath herself to Jesus, and she was reported to the local prefect with the name Sempronius for being a Christian. He tried everything he could, and he tried torture and everything else he could think of to convert her to paganism. But when that didn't work, she paid the ultimate price and he had her beheaded. But the story doesn't end there. When reading about Agnes, I found that she's actually the patron saint of, wait for it, those seeking chastity and purity, engaged couples, rape victims, gardeners, young girls and Girl Scouts. I'm sure it all makes sense to those people with religion. All we know now is that her legend eventually made it all the way to Cornwall, and this village got named in her honour. I should have mentioned that if you'd carried on past the railway down to the crossroads and then took a left, you'd have St Agnes Museum on the right. You can't actually go in there until April because it's only open during the summer, but it's well worth a look. If you park in the car park where I did, it's only a short walk and admission's free. And you don't hear that word too often. Inside it's got 6,500 items relating to the town's rich mining history, maritime history, and there's a detailed model of the former harbour and a great Lady Agnes figurehead. As I arrive in town, it's interesting to look at the shops and the buildings they sit in. This deli and butcher's, for instance, around 1900, Mr. and Mrs. May ran a double-fronted drapers and grocers shop. You can see above today's signage where the previous signs might have been. Sort of a bit of cleaner stonework. As we walk a little bit further and get past the traffic, and we come to St Agnes Church. St Agnes didn't just grow out of the ground by accident. During the pre-Norman period, there was a Celtic chapel dedicated to St Agnes. There was also a holy well and a storehouse inside a stone-walled area. More dwellings grew around it, starting the beginnings of what eventually became a town. The present church was built on the site of the chapel in 1482. It was initially a chapel of ease, meaning somewhere local people could pray, but wasn't an official parish church. It became official in 1846. I don't know if that makes it more holy or not, but I'm sure it still does a good trade in welcoming people with their births, marriages and deaths. So look inside if there's somebody out. Keep the birds out. That's a fine looking building, isn't it? That's unusual. Have him standing up there. I don't know who these chaps and chapesses are. Well, let's move on. Anybody want any chickpeas or beans? I can go on past for now. Let's have a look at the churchyard. Oh, we've got the daffodils coming out. They're out in some places. There's one or two out down here. Yeah, we're on the slope. We'll just go back along here I notice at the bottom is Stippy Stappy, but we'll come to that in a bit. The lower part of the tower is the only significant surviving part of the medieval structure. You can't tell because they've done a good job of matching it up. In the 19th century, Methodism swept through the mining communities and chapels popped up all over the parish and beyond, giving miners somewhere else to sing their hearts out when they weren't half a mile underground. I do have this photo of the church from 1905. The church tower had been struck by lightning, and a steeplejack called Mr. Larkins from London came to assess the damage. He stated that the strike must have hit with some tremendous force because there was not one sound joint at the bottom of the steeple. He was surprised it hadn't already toppled over. Obviously it was so unsafe that although it looked as if only the tip was smashed, the whole spire had to be dismantled and rebuilt. Please give generously to the roof fund. I mean, you never know when lightning might strike twice. If we look across the road, we see St Agnes Hotel. It used to be called Paul's Hotel. Okay. On the left-hand side here is now Porthveen, which is a rental. But it used to be Treleaven and Co. Outfitters and Tailors. St Agnes Hotel is a pet-friendly, family-run 17th century pub sitting here in the centre of town opposite the church. The Aggie, as it's affectionately known by locals, is a traditional pub with guest rooms and a restaurant that uses local produce. Inside the pub's a cosy and welcoming interior that's warm and full of character. You can enjoy a drink in the bar, relax in front of the open fire, or in the warmer months they have an outside bar and pizza kitchen. Over here we have St Agnes Bakery, great little coffee shop and bakery. I don't know if it's the original St Agnes Bakery, but from 1906 to 1910, James Hooper ran what was called a high-class bakery. In 1910, when Thomas John Delbridge started in business, he no doubt wanted something he thought sounded fancier, so his signage professed that he was a scientific baker. I wonder which one's bread tasted better. Right, let's try to get down the road without getting run over. Here we are now at a row of cottages called Stippy Stappy. There we go. Yes, that is their real name. The name comes from the local Cornish dialect, which directly describes the steep-stepped or steepy nature of the path. I don't know if you can tell that what that's like on camera. These are the 18th century stone cottages that descend deeply from the church down towards the road to the cove, and they're now famous because they featured in the Pole Dart books. They were most likely in the TV series too, but I haven't watched it, so I don't know. Anyway, it's that dramatic story about the Cornish mining captain and his wife. Apart from the Wizard of Oz, he's probably the next most famous tin man outside of Cornwall. Here's a glimpse of the desperate couple.
It's been a hellish day, and I'm not myself.
Well, this is where it all happened, at least in the author's mind. And if you watch the way these cottages tumbled down the hillside, you can absolutely imagine why they captured the imagination of a novelist. Ooh, we have some snowdrops. Oh, lovely to see, aren't they? Oh, they're steep gardens to look after, aren't they? Crikey. Okay, let's carry on down. I can understand why they called it Stippy Stappy, because it is quite steep. Climbing up again, slightly. And here we meet Key Road, which gives a clue as to where it ends up. Right. Today's wander around St Agnes is all about the village itself, the people, the past, and how this little Cornish community somehow survived spending most of its money on a harbour the Atlantic kept smashing to bits. St Agnes sits up here on the hill between Redruth and Perranporth, and these days it looks every inch the relaxed coastal village. Independent shops, cafes, surfboards on roofs, people walking dogs. But for most of its life this was a serious working place. Mining, fishing, quarrying, farming. If it could be dug up, grown or dragged out of the sea, someone here was making a living out of it. As I walk through the village, take a look at the field patterns on the hills around here. Small, irregular fields bordered by chunky old stone hedges. These came from enclosing wild moorland, often after miners had already pockmarked it with shallow pits for tin and copper. Centuries of mining shaped not just the skyline here, but the way the land itself is carved up. By the mid-19th century, St Agnes was booming and getting deeper and more sophisticated. Engine houses, mills, smelters, even arsenic calciners all cropped up around the parish. There were iron foundries and iron works, tin stamps, crazing mills and blowing houses. The stamps smashed the tin ore to smaller pieces, and the crazing mills were like quernstones, used for grinding or pulverising the tin ore into a fine powder, or crazing it to prepare it for a smelting process. Blowing houses were buildings typically located near streams, where tin ore was smelted into ingots using charcoal and air forced into a furnace by large bellows. The bellows were operated by a water wheel. The ore went in, coal came in, and ingots came out. The whole place hummed to the sound of steam and metal. It's hard to imagine now when the loudest thing is usually the surf and the occasional seagull trying to mug someone for a pasty. So we're now on the road down to the cove, but as I say, be careful. If you venture down here, it's a car and pedestrian free-for-all. But at least there are some lovely cafes and coffee shops en route, if you fancy a break. Ooh, a pathway, or a mudway. Farming eventually caught up with mining as well. For a long time the moors around here were too poor to support serious agriculture, but after enclosure and improvement, more drainage, better soils, cultivation pushed almost up to the top of St Agnes Beacon, and by the late 1800s farming had become the largest trade in the area. The town had its own lime kilns by the slipway in the cove, providing quicklime, which would have helped improve the soil. There were even maltings in nearby Peterville, turning local barley into the raw material for beer, which feels like a very Cornish progression. Dig, farm, then brew. Makes complete sense. Nice to have a Engine house in your back garden. That's a good filter. Okay, onwards. Lovely old buildings down here. I wonder how old that one is. Be nosy now. There's some more lovely old cottages. And one's another cafe. That's very posh, isn't it? Q Cafe. Trevornance Cove Art Design Workshops. Gosh, let's have a peek. Workshop closed today. Call or text. Nice paintings. If you can see, if you're a collector of local art, why not? Give it a go. Huh. That's a novel idea for a garage door. So people take their dog for a walk. He's taking his obligatory surfboard. So anyway, as we wander down, we can just catch sight of the Driftwood Spas. It's an historic 1650s Cornish inn located here in Trevornance Cove, renowned for its construction using massive wooden beams salvaged from shipwrecks. It features a wrecker's or smuggler's tunnel behind the bar. Legends suggest this tunnel was used to transport contraband from the beach directly into the inn in smuggling days. The name originates from the giant shipwreck timbers, spars, used in the building structure. The walls are made of slate and granite. It operated as a warehouse, chandlery and fish cellar before becoming a hotel in the early 1900s and a public house in the 1940s. There's the beer garden, which is very nice to sit out when the sun shines. This is the Driftwood Spas Brewery. Founded in 2000, it's become well regarded. It's an award-winning microbrewery, famous for producing gluten-free beers. The pub is practically on the southwest coast path, and it's got a history of live music since the 1960s. They even hosted the band Queen early in their career. They began their career down here when Truro boy Roger Taylor's mum arranged a gig for them at Truro Town Hall, now the Hall for Cornwall. It was supposed to be in aid of the Red Cross. Roger said of the event, "We were paid £50, which was a lot of money back then." I'm not sure many people turned up though. Wonder if any of the locals remember that. Right, we're heading down to the cove now, and we'll see you on the beach.
Join me next time as I continue my exploration of St Agnes, where I'll tell you all about the beach, the lost harbour that used to export tons of tin and copper and import coal, and I'll look at some of the local tin mines dating from the 15th century right up to about 50 years ago. Thanks for watching and see you next time.